Chapter 1. The Dare Beneath the Stars. The Calypsis orbital station hung suspended between two suns, its glass panel promenades and neon-lit spires glowing like a jewel against the star-flecked void. Inside, the air smelled faintly of ozone and spice, the mingled breath of a dozen alien species. Jaren walked slower than the crowd, his boots heavy on the polished metal floor, each step echoing against the constant hum of the station's engines. To the passerby, he was just another orphan human, broad-shouldered, slightly awkward, with hands too big for the delicate tools most aliens preferred. But to his family, the three tiny sisters of the Cerati clan, he was a plaything. Human, hissed Vera, the boldest of them, her translucent ears twitching as she darted in front of him. She was barely shoulder height, all sinewy grace and luminous silver eyes. You shuffle like a broken automaton. How do you expect to impress anyone if you can't even walk properly? Her sisters, Lyra and Kaish, chimed in with a chorus of clicking laughter, the sound like wind chimes stirred by a storm. They moved with liquid precision, their bodies flickering under the station's neon as if born of light itself. Jaren exhaled through his nose and forced a crooked grin. I'm trying not to step on you. Hard to remember you're not shadows with how quick you dart around. That only earned him more laughter. The sting wasn't new, but tonight their teasing carried a sharper edge. The sisters had been whispering all day about the trial Hall of Ascension, where young warriors tested their worth. For Cerati, it was tradition, an honor. For Jaren, it was suicide. Vera's eyes narrowed, and she stepped closer, her voice low, taunting. Then prove it. Tonight, enter the hall human, and show us you're more than soft skin and loud lungs. Jaren stopped walking. Beyond the glass canopy, the galaxy spread infinite and merciless, twin suns casting a pale shimmer across his reflection. He clenched his fists at his sides, not from anger, but from the sudden pounding in his chest. He had spent years in their shadow, the odd sibling, tolerated but never trusted. You're serious? His voice came out quieter than he meant, almost drowned beneath the hum of power conduits in the ceiling. Lyra leaned on the railing, her gossamer hair catching the starlight. If you succeed, you'll have no more mockery from us. Fail and... She shrugged, a gesture that in their culture meant inevitable truth. Jaren looked at them one by one. Their eyes shone with cruel amusement, but also something else, something he had only recently begun to notice. Expectation, maybe even hope. He rubbed the scar on his palm, a human habit none of them understood. Fine, he muttered, though the word tasted like fire on his tongue. Then louder, steadier. Fine. Tonight, I'll prove it. The sisters stilled. Their laughter died like sparks fading in airless dark. For the first time, their gazes softened, and a strange silence passed between them, heavy with the weight of tradition. Vera smiled, not mockingly now, but with something sharper. Then tonight, human, you either become one of us or you break. Jaren turned back toward the station's heart, where the trial hall waited, his reflection in the glass canopy walking beside the stars. He didn't know if this was bravery or madness, but for the first time in his life, he wasn't walking in their shadow. He was stepping into his own. Chapter 2, Blood Circuits and Song. The trial Hall of Ascension did not look like a place built for the living. Its entrance yawned in the belly of the station like a wound, a massive arch rimmed with shifting glyphs that pulsed with faint blue light. The air grew colder the closer Jaren stepped, the metallic tang of recycled oxygen mixing with something sweeter, like flowers laced with static. His sisters trailed behind him, silent now, their usual mockery replaced by nervous anticipation. The doors parted with a hiss. Inside, the chamber stretched vast and impossible, far larger than the station's dimensions should allow. Glowing vines crept along the walls, their tips dripping beads of liquid light. The floor shifted as he stepped, plates of alloy rearranging themselves like a living puzzle. From somewhere above, a low hum resonated, the sound of machinery waiting. "Remember," whispered Lyra, her voice barely audible. "The Hall adapts. It tests what you fear." Jaren gave her a dry smile. "Guess I'll find out if it can build an entire army of school bullies, then." No one laughed. He took his first step inside. The door sealed behind him with the finality of a coffin lid. The hall came alive. Walls unfolded into jagged cliffs. Artificial foliage bloomed, leaves of glass shimmering in the false light. Out of the shadows emerged the first guardians, machines shaped like predators, their bodies plated in chrome, their eyes glowing red slits. They prowled the edges of the arena, circling him. Jaren's heartbeat thundered in his ears. His hands itched for a weapon he didn't have. The Sarati trained for years before entering here. He had only stubbornness and a knack for making do with nothing. The first machine lunged. He threw himself aside, rolling across the shifting floor as metal claws tore sparks where he'd stood. His palm smacked against a shard of glass leaf that had broken loose. The edge bit his skin, drawing blood. He stared at the crimson on his hand, then at the predator stalking him. "Fine," he muttered, gripping the shard tight. "Let's dance." The machine came again, but this time he sidestepped and jammed the shard into its sensor cluster. The predator spasmed, shrieking in a metallic wail before collapsing in a heap of twitching limbs. Above, hidden behind the viewing screens, his sisters gasped. Vera leaned forward, whispering to the others, "He improvises. No Sarati would ever think to." Her words were drowned as the hall shifted again. Bioluminescent flowers swelled into monstrous blooms, their petals vibrating with a low, bone-deep drone. Jaren clutched his ears. The sound wasn't just noise. It clawed into his skull, disorienting, nauseating. Then, without thinking, he did the most human thing possible. He sang, a rough tune, half remembered from Earth, his mother's voice faint across the years. He sang off-key, loudly, defiantly. The vibration of his own chest cut through the drone, grounding him. The alien flora shivered, confused by the alien frequency. Their hum faltered. Jaren staggered forward, still singing, weaving to the maze of light and shadow. Each verse steadied his breath, turned panic into rhythm. By the time the flowers dimmed, retreating into walls, sweat poured down his face and his throat burned raw. But he was alive. The chamber rearranged again, walls twisting into a new shape, challenges yet to come. Somewhere faintly, he imagined his sister's laughter had changed. Not sharp, not cruel, but tinged with something else. Ah. Chapter 3. The Betrayal in the Shadows. The hall shifted again. Walls folded like origami, reshaping corridors into sharp angles, plunging half the chamber into shadow. Jaren stood in the middle, chest heaving, the metallic taste of blood in his mouth from where he'd bitten his tongue while rolling. The hum of hidden machinery pressed against his ears, but underneath it, faint, almost imperceptible, he heard something else. Whispers, not the mechanical voices of the hall, but alien voices. In the gallery above, the Sarati youth gathered to watch, their jeweled garments glowing faintly in the dim light. Among them was Saith, the matriarch's favorite heir, tall and wiry with a cruel curve to his lips. He had always despised the human orphan who shared the clan's halls, despised how the sisters gave him even a sliver of attention. Now, Saith leaned forward, one clawed finger brushing across the glyph controls embedded in the railing. His whisper cut like a blade. "Let the human burn." Below, the hall obeyed, not the trial's programming, but Saith's sabotage. The lights flickered, then died. Total blackness swallowed the chamber. From the floor, vents hissed open, spilling out a stench of sulfur and rot. Jaren froze, his instincts screaming. Then came the sound, wet clicking, a chorus of gnashing teeth. The void beasts poured out. They were not machines. They were living nightmares, flesh twisted by void exposure, eyeless, with jaws that opened too wide and claws that scraped sparks against the alloy floor. They moved in jerks, half in this dimension, half somewhere darker. Jaren's throat tightened. This wasn't part of the trial. He knew it. They've rigged it against me. Above, Lyra gasped, clutching Vera's wrist. That's not sanctioned. But her words were cut off as the gallery itself shuddered. Sections of the ceiling caved in, dropping debris and sealing exits. The sisters scrambled, their slender forms darting, but a barrier of shifting alloys slammed down, trapping them in the chamber's lower alcove. Jaren turned at the sound of their cries. For a heartbeat, fear hollowed his chest. He could run deeper into the hall, maybe survive, but his sisters, mocking, cruel, relentless as they'd been, were pressed against a barrier, silver eyes wide with real terror. And something in Jaren broke. He wasn't here for their approval anymore. He wasn't here to prove himself. He was here because they were his family, whether they admitted it or not. A void beast lunged. Jaren grabbed a loose shard of metal from the debris and swung with every ounce of human desperation. The impact jolted up his arms, but the creature shrieked, collapsing into a smear of dark ichor that hissed against the floor. "Stay behind me!" he shouted, voice cracking with strain. The sisters pressed against the barrier, their faces pale, their mockery gone. Another beast circled, claws scraping. Jaren shifted his weight, adrenaline pumping, his mind racing not with instinct, but with strategy. He wasn't the strongest, wasn't the fastest. But humans were something these creatures, and the Serity never expected. Relentless improvisers. He kicked the fallen support beam, knocking sparks into a leaking conduit. The shower of light startled the eyeless predators, buying him seconds. Enough to drag debris into a makeshift barricade. Enough to stand tall in front of the sisters who had dared him here. The chamber smelled of blood, ozone, and rot. The beasts hissed in the dark. His sisters whispered his name, trembling. For the first time in his life, Jaren wasn't the outsider, the fool, the clumsy human. He was their shield. Chapter 4. Heartbeats against the void. The barricade lasted less than a minute. The void beast slammed against it, claws tearing metal like wet parchment. Their screeches reverberating through the chamber until the sound felt like knives in Jaren's skull. He staggered back, sweat slicking his brow, the shard of metal in his hand bent and useless. Jaren. Vera's voice carried through the barrier. Her silver eyes, always sharp with mockery, were wide with something he had never seen in her before. Fear, they'll tear you apart. Not if I move first, Jaren growled, half to her, half to himself. The chamber shuddered as another wall folded, opening into a wide shaft where gravity faltered. Loose debris drifted upward, glowing spores spiraling like tiny stars in the sudden zero-G. The void beasts hesitated at the threshold, their jerking bodies flickering in and out of sight as if the unstable gravity distorted them. An idea struck him, reckless, dangerous, stupid. Exactly the kind of idea a human would chase. Jaren grabbed a length of sparking common from the debris, its exposed wires buzzing in his grip. He looked up at the shaft, where the broken pieces of the hull floated lazily. Then he turned back to the sisters. "When I move, follow me. Don't stop, don't think. Just move." Kay shook her head, her translucent ears quivering. "You'll die?" "Not tonight," he said, and launched himself upward. The sudden absence of gravity lifted him like a dream. The conduit in his hand arced electricity, casting harsh blue light across the chamber. A void beast leapt after him, its elongated body flailing, but Jaren twisted midair, slamming the conduit into its jaw. Sparks and black ichor exploded in zero-G, droplets scattering like ink across glass. He landed hard against a floating panel, pain jolting through his knees. The sisters scrambled behind him, less graceful than usual, their alien elegance undone by the strangeness of weightlessness. For once, they looked awkward, and for once, Jaren's clumsy human body thrived. He knew falls, stumbles, and balance. He made chaos his ally. "Use the drift," he shouted, shoving off another panel. "Don't fight it, ride it." The sisters followed, mimicking his movements, their fear giving way to a strange, breathless exhilaration. Behind them, void beasts clawed at the air, but without gravity their jerking lunges only spun them helplessly. Jaren angled himself toward a broken support strut, catching it and redirecting his momentum to slam into one of the beasts, hurling it into the wall. The impact cracked his body apart in a spray of smoke and void light. For a moment, the chamber was chaos. Screams, sparks, the hiss of ruptured vents. Jaren's throat burned with each gasp, his muscles screaming from effort. But as he looked back, he saw his sisters, once mocking, now clinging to him, their silver eyes locked on his every move. Not as a joke, not as a human oddity, as their anchor. A beast lunged at Keish, its jaws yawning wide. Jaren didn't hesitate. He launched himself off a drifting slab, slamming into her with enough force to knock the breath from both of them. His free hand grabbed the edge of the beast's jaw, straining, veins bulging his neck as he wrenched aside. The teeth grazed his shoulder, hot blood blooming across his shirt. Pain seared through him, but the creature tumbled into the gravity rift and was torn apart in a blur of shadow and sparks. Keish clutched his arm, trembling. "Why? Why would you?" "Because you're my sister," Jaren said through clenched teeth, "and no one touches my family." The words hung in the chamber, heavier than the shifting gravity. For a heartbeat, even the void beasts seemed to falter, their screeches distant. When the hall shifted again, opening a corridor lit with a pale, beckoning glow, the sisters didn't hesitate. They moved with him, not mocking, not doubting, trusting. And for the first time in his life, Jaren realized he wasn't following their shadow anymore. They were following him. Chapter 5, The Queen's Judgment. The doors of the trial hall ground opened with a shriek of metal. Jaren stumbled through first, clothes torn, blood crusted on his shoulder, every muscle trembling as though his body might collapse. Behind him, Vera, Lyra, and Keish followed close, their luminous skin dull with exhaustion, their usually effortless grace reduced to shaky steps. The air outside was warmer, perfumed with alien incense meant to mask the sharp tang of scorched circuitry that clung to him. Rows of Ceratine nobles and apprentices lined the gallery, their jeweled garments shimmering in silence. No laughter, no jeers, only wide, unblinking eyes. At the far end of the chamber sat Queen Serathil, matriarch of the clan, her throne a living construct of metal and vine that pulsed faintly with her breath. 6 eyes, deep as nebulae, regarded him without expression. Her crown of spiked crystal reflected the glow of the chamber lights, making her seem less like a ruler and more like a constellation given flesh. Jaren dropped to one knee, more from exhaustion than reverence. His chest heaved, his voice a rasp. Trial complete. Whispers rippled through the gallery, but none dared speak louder than breath. The queen rose slowly, her many-limbed gown trailing like liquid night as she descended. Each step carried the weight of judgment, the sound of her heels striking the metal floor like a tolling bell. When she stopped before him, she did not address him first. She looked to his sisters. "You dared him," she said, her voice deep and resonant, vibrating the very air. "You mocked him, threw him into a fire not meant for his kind. And yet," her gaze slid back to Jaren, "he returns with you alive, intact, changed." Vera, who never bowed anyone, bent her head. Her voice shook. "He saved us, matriarch." Again and again. He made us follow when fear should have broken us. Lyra's silver eyes shimmered with unshed tears. He was not supposed to endure, but he did, and he carried us with him. Keish, the quietest, stepped forward. Her small hand found Jaren's torn sleeve. He is no longer the outsider. He is our brother. Gasps broke across the hall. Safe, the rival youth who had sabotaged the trial, sneered and hissed from the gallery. Lies! He cheated. He broke the hall's rules. The queen lifted one hand. Silence fell instantly. Her 6 eyes narrowed on Safe, and though her words were measured, they struck like a blade. The hall adapts. The hall reveals truth. It showed us a human who turned chaos into weapon, weakness into strength. He did not break the trial. Safe. He became its measure. She turned back to Jaren, studying him. For a long heartbeat. The hall was so quiet he could hear the blood rushing in his ears, the faint hum of conduits running beneath the floor. Then the queen placed one hand on his bloodied shoulder. Jaren of Terra, she declared, her voice rolling across the chamber like thunder. By instinct, you should have died. By tradition, you should have failed. Yet by will, by sacrifice, by a fire no Sarity can mimic, you endured. Humanity's gift is not strength or grace. It is defiance. And for that, you are ours. The nobles bowed their heads. His sisters knelt beside him, no longer mocking, no longer distant, but in solidarity. Jaren raised his eyes, throat raw with emotion. For the first time since arriving on the station, since losing everything that tethered him to Earth, he felt it, not just acceptance, belonging. The queen's final word sealed it. Tonight, human, you are Sarity. Chapter 6. Tonight, I am one of you. Later, when the ceremonies ended and the last of the nobles drifted away into the jeweled corridors of the station, Jaren found himself back beneath the glass canopy of the upper promenade, the same place where it had all begun. The twin suns were low now, casting streaks of copper and violet across the void. Stars burned in the distance like frozen sparks, and the vast body of Calypsis itself glimmered in their reflection. The promenade was quiet, save for the faint thrum of engines deep below and the occasional hiss of venting plasma from the station's outer hull. He leaned against a railing, muscles aching, blood still stiff on his shirt. His reflection in the glass looked older, harder. Not the clumsy outsider anymore. Something else. Footsteps approached, soft, measured. His sisters. Vera stopped first, her usual smirk gone, her silver eyes unreadable. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, almost reluctantly, she reached out and tugged at his sleeve. You bleed too much, she muttered. It's distracting. Jaren chuckled, a low sound that hurt his ribs. I'll try to keep it down next time. Lyra slid to his other side, resting her elbows on the rail. The starlight painted her hair like spun glass. You shouldn't have survived, she whispered, her voice softer than he'd ever heard it. But you did, and you pulled us with you. Keish, smallest of the three, pressed close, her hand brushing his. She didn't look at him, just at the stars. I thought you'd leave us. I thought we'd mocked you too far. Jaren looked at each of them in turn. Their faces, once filled with scorn, now carried something heavier, something he had longed for without daring to name. Recognition. I wasn't trying to prove anything, he said finally. His voice was rough, but steady. Not to the hall, not to the queen, just to you. Silence stretched between them. The hum of the station filled it, steady and endless, like the heartbeat of a giant. Then Vera exhaled sharply, and for the first time her smile wasn't cruel. Idiot human, you already have. They stood together at the railing, the four of them, watching the galaxy wheel slowly past. For once, there was no mockery, no daring, no barbs to cut him down. only a fragile, growing warmth. Jaren closed his eyes, letting the sounds of the station and the vast silence of the void wash over him. Somewhere in the distance, he could hear faint music from a Sarati festival, bells and voices, rising like a hymn. He opened his eyes again, gazing out into stars. His hand tightened on the rail. Tonight, I am not alone. Tonight, I am theirs. The sisters leaned against him, quiet and steady. And under the eternal starlight, Jaren understood. This was not the end of his story. It was the beginning of a new one, written not in alien mockery, but in human defiance, family, and belonging. The starship drifted in silence, engines humming low as it coasted through the velvet dark. Beyond the viewport stretched an ocean of alien constellations, suns burning strange colors, nebulae like brushstrokes of fire across the void. Below, on the distant world they had left behind, the neon city still pulsed faintly, a reminder of trials survived, betrayals faced, and bonds reforged. Jaren stood at the glass, his reflection pale against the endless stars. His body ached, scars still fresh, but his heart was steady. Beside him, Vera approached, her silver eyes softer than he had ever seen them. She said nothing at first, only reached out and let her slender hand rest against his. The contact was small, almost fragile, yet it bound them tighter than blood. "You were supposed to fail," she whispered, voice trembling with both shame and awe. "But instead you carried us all." Jaren turned, meeting her gaze. He gave a tired, lopsided smile. "That's what humans do. We fall, we bleed, but we never stop carrying the people we love." The others gathered behind them, sisters once mockers, now family. The artificial gravity pulsed faintly underfoot, steady as a heartbeat, steady as their bond. For the first time, they stood together as equals. The stars blazed bright across the viewport, and in their light Jaren whispered words that would echo longer than any trial. "Tonight, I am one of you. But tomorrow, we're something greater together." And as the ship surged forward, the galaxy opened before them, no longer a place of exile, but a home waiting to be claimed.